Welcome to Chess Pains. Today we'll be talking about the King's Pawn opening. It is by far the most common opening for white, and it's a fairly successful opening for white. It's pretty even depending on what black plays, but most variations do favor white. E4, black's most common response, c5, knight f3, d6, d4. From here, the most common move is c takes d4. However, that is not as successful of a move as knight f6. So we're going to play knight f6. And then after knight f6, knight c3. And now we can take that pawn. And white will take with the knight. You can take with the queen, but that's not recommended. Getting the queen out too early is never recommended. If you're playing against lower rated players, you're going to be okay doing that, but it is definitely better to get your minor pieces developed first and have your queens and rooks, if you play chess a lot, you already understand that, but a lot of beginners on here might not. So anyway, from here, knight c6, bishop b5, bishop g5 is also very common from here. In fact, let's go back and show that one. That's a little more common. From here, the most common move for black is e6, but that gives black a 30% success rate and white a 40%, whereas queen to b6 will give white and black each a 36% success rate. And a6, which I do play a lot if I'm playing black, whether I'm playing French or Sicilian, it gives white 36% and black 39% success rate. So this actually gives black an advantage. So if you're black playing this position, I definitely recommend a6 over queen b6 and e6. The next variation I'm going to show you, pawn e4, pawn e5, which used to be the most common opening until people decided the Sicilian was better. Then white will play knight f3, and this is great for white. We're only 1.5 moves in, and from this spot on, white is way more successful than black. Black's best move is known as c6, knight c6. But from here, after bishop b5, white's still way more successful. It's like 37% to 25%, if I recall. Black will play a6, try to kick that bishop away. You can take the bishop. You can take the knight with the bishop, but it's recommended to just move back to a4. And in fact, the percentage from here gets even worse for black, the success rate. Play knight f6. This is the most common move for black. From here, d6 actually is a more successful move. It's just less common, but it actually is way more even. It's like 38% to 37% or something like that. So it's definitely better for black than knight f6 as far as success rate goes. But since it's not played as often, those numbers aren't very comparable. So if you do play as black against the king's pawn opening, that's kind of something to play around with. You know, sometimes play d6, see how well that works out for you. Play knight f6. It's not very common. Some people even play knight e7 or bishop e7. It really just kind of depends on the player as far as what you prefer to do. But the knight f6 and d6 are more recommended. This last variation I am going to show you real quick is the king's pawn opening against the French defense. If you're black, I do not recommend playing the French defense here, but it is very common, so I'm going to show you guys anyway. White will usually play d4, and that's a very strong move for white. Black obviously would play d5. White's going to play knight c3. Knight f6. Oops. Now here you're going to play bishop g5. A lot of players will play b5 if they're new. Don't do that. Pawn moves to c6, and you've lost the tempo. Black has a tempo move, so just don't do that. From here, black most of the time will play bishop to e7, which is not a bad move. It helps protect that knight. If that bishop does take the knight, you are kind of forced to take it with the queen or the pawn if you do not move the bishop there. And taking with the pawn is really bad because you've completely weakened your king side, and you're not going to want a castle over there. And if you take with the queen, you're getting your queen out too early, and you don't want to do that either. However, d takes e4 is also a really good move. It's not quite as common, but it actually has a slightly better success rate. From here, knight's going to take e4, and knight cannot take the knight because this queen would get taken from the bishop. Anyway, now from here, black has a lot of different options. One of them, obviously, you can go to bishop e7 now after taking the pawn. Move another knight out to either c6 or even d7. You can move the bishop out to d6. That is another common move I saw. I don't recommend that, but some people do. You do have to be worried, though. This knight is being attacked by a knight and a bishop. And there's only one pawn here on the d-file. I want to go ahead and wish Monica a happy birthday. Definitely one of my favorite chess players. And 99% of her games start with this opening, so it's perfect.